Good morning to all of you, and a warm welcome to those of you who don't call Singapore a home. You have already noticed that Singapore really provides a very warm welcome to its visitors. The temperature is 32 degrees every day, so you don't have to worry about getting cold here. It is indeed a pleasure and a privilege for me to be speaking here today to all of you, and I would like to thank Terrapin for inviting me as a speaker and giving IATA an opportunity to share some thoughts and information with all of you. My intention is to give you an idea of where the industry is now and what kind of challenges and opportunities we can expect in the next few years. I cannot go into great detail because that would take far too long, but hopefully this snapshot will give you at least something to think about. I will try to cover the following topics. Forecasts, then benefits of aviation, and last the upcoming developments in Asian aviation, and that topic includes some subtopics as well, such as liberalization, environment, and a few others. Let me start by presenting the latest forecast for our industry. You already actually got them earlier, but I'll repeat. Although nothing really sensational, I do have some good news to share. Earlier this month, IATA revised upwards the outlook for 2012 airline industry profits from 3 billion to 4.1 billion. This is a small change, but the direction is the right one. Last year, the airlines made a profit of 8.4 billion, so the result for this year as a whole is a disappointment, but not as bad as we had previously expected. But we should not get too excited. This is a 1.1 billion revision on revenues of 636 billion. So the net profit margin will be 0.6% instead of 0.5%. That, of course, is a wafer-thin margin. But in the past, the industry would have been losing money with oil prices averaging at $110 a barrel and global GDP growth at 2.1%. We are dangerously close to the 2% mark below which historically airlines have returned a collective loss. Well, the good news is that the airlines are keeping their heads up above the water better than we thought in a very, very difficult operating environment. Our Director General and CEO Tony Tyler often says that our industry has a lot of turnover but very little left over. Well, isn't that the truth? Our total revenues would place our industry on the 19th place in terms of GDP among the world's economies, just before Switzerland. However, the aggregate profit would only be comparable to the economies of Barbados or Swaziland. On the passenger side of the business, we have seen a more robust performance in traffic volumes during the first half of the year than expected. People are flying in greater numbers despite the economic uncertainty. And we have increased our passenger projections by 0.5 percentage point to 5.3% growth for the year. This is, however, below the 6% historical trend. And if we look into which market segments are growing, we can see that the premium side of the business is suffering. The impact of low business confidence is even more evident on the cargo side of the business. In June, we thought that we might end the year with a small 0.3% gain in cargo volumes, but cargo volumes are actually contracting, and we expect to end the year with a 0.4 below previous year's levels. Now to the Asia Pacific. In Asia Pacific, the airlines are expected to be the best performers, making a 2.3 billion profit, which is $300 million better than we had previously expected. In rough numbers, we could say that Asia Pacific represents 1/3 of the global traffic and a little bit more than a half of its profits. This says a lot about how the growth in Asia Pacific has not only been based on volume, but also on favorable returns. One must, however, remember that Asia Pacific is a very large region, and some parts of it are definitely doing better than others. For example, two big markets like India and China show very different developments. The airline industry in India is struggling, whereas the airlines in China are showing healthy and profitable growth. It is not only a coincidence that the government policies and the taxation are less supportive to the airline industry in India than in China. Despite a slowdown in the Chinese economy, Chinese domestic demand is still growing at nearly 10%. And the demand for regional and long-haul travel, including the premium classes, has held up better than expected in the face of economic uncertainty. This good news has been moderated by the poor performance for cargo. Asia Pacific carriers account for about 40% of the global cargo market. So they are more exposed than carriers in other regions to the current weakness. So before moving on to a quick look at 2013, let me share some highlights from our September financial monitor regarding the third quarter of this year. Airline share prices increased around 4% in September. Quarter 3 business conditions look tougher, with softening volumes and yields plus rise in fuel cost earlier in the quarter. Earlier expansion of air travel and freight volume slowed to a halt in quarter 3, and capacity growth is slowing, but not fast enough to stop some slippage in passenger load factors in the first part of quarter 3. So what can we expect to see happening in 2013? The situation is expected to improve moderately. Most likely the external factors will not change dramatically. Fuel prices are forecasted to soften very slightly to $105 per barrel for Brent. This and recent governments and central bank actions are expected to improve the GDP growth from 2.1% to 2.5%. This combination will result in industry profits gaining ground to $7.5 billion next year. But against anticipated revenues of $660 billion, that will be a 1.1% profit margin. Well, this slide here shows the roller coaster ride that the airlines are experiencing. The cycles are short and the curves are quite sharp. It also shows that Asia Pacific is doing better than other parts of the world, which of course is a very positive thing for those airlines operating and doing their business in Asia Pacific. But before closing the topic of forecast, let me finish by giving an unofficial glimpse to a bit further down in the future. These figures are only academic estimates, and because the political and the business environments in our world are somewhat unpredictable, and IATA is not able to give you accurate forecasts, therefore. So the estimates for year 2015 are the following. The airline industry will generate between $700 and $750 billion worth of revenues and carry around 3.5 billion passengers and over 50 million tons of cargo. According to the OECD, the global GDP is estimated to be increasing by around 2.9% both 2014 and 2015, after having been, according to the present estimates, at the 2.5% level during 2013. If these predictions are materialized, these forecasts would support positive developments regarding the profit margins for the airline industry in the next 3 years. Fuel prices, as already mentioned by Andrew, are historically volatile and will continue to be a major factor regarding operating costs, and could continue representing more than 30% of the share of the operating cost in average. Now, of course, like Andrew said, a lot of carriers have a much higher share of the fuel cost, represent a much higher share, but in average around 30+%. The growth engines will be Asia Pacific and the Middle East. So I'm leaving now the forecasting and going to one of my favorite topics, which is the benefits of aviation. And when we talk about benefits, I do not only mean the airlines, the passengers, the airports, and many other stakeholders, but indeed the economies of all nations. Unfortunately, not all governments have understood this, and some of them are treating the airline industry as if we were an endless source of tax revenues, rather than seeing us as generators of economic growth, jobs, wealth, connectivity, cultural exchange, social interaction, just to mention a few of the many benefits. IATA has, together with Oxford Economics, conducted a study of the benefits of aviation in 58 countries. Some of them here in Asia Pacific are Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, the People's Republic of China, and India. IATA has conducted campaigns this year to create awareness around this highly important subject, and we've done it quite often together with the airline communities in the many countries that I mentioned. These studies are available and should not only be used once or twice, but continuously. They reveal the present situation and the huge unleashed potential. The airlines in this room and supporters of the airline industry are more than welcome to become advocacy partners with IATA, so that we could together spread the positive message of how important our industry is for the world. So, what are the benefits? I mean, there are a lot of benefits, but let's just talk about a few of them. Aviation creates employment for almost 57 million people and supports $2.2 trillion of the global GDP. Our industry is highly critical to global supply chains, connecting businesses and people, and making the global village possible. Aviation delivers enormous value to the world, and that the airlines struggle to eke out an unsustainable 1.1% net profit margin is clear evidence that the aviation still faces many challenges. So let's now look at the Asia Pacific part. This information is slightly old, but it gives you an idea of the importance of our region in terms of aviation and tourism. This slide shows the important impact of the aviation industry has in the Asia Pacific economies and job creation. So this is the impact on the economies, and the previous one was the share of Asia Pacific in the whole industry production. So let's go now to 20 years ahead in time and see what the future will bring to our region. Again, I'm repeating what Andrew said earlier, talking about the middle income segment in Asia Pacific. It consists of 500 million people today. In 20 years' time, this segment is estimated to grow to 3 billion people. This growth of wealth and new demand for products and services, including air transport, represents a huge opportunity, but also many great challenges. Our industry needs to start preparing for it now. This can only be done with the cooperation of all stakeholders, including the airlines and the governments. So the question is, are we ready for this? Not quite, but with sensible policies, substantial government support, effective and competent regulatory environment, fair taxation, reasonable charges and fees, liberalized markets, seamless skies, and a global solution regarding the environmental responsibility of our industry, this will become a road to success. We have, of course, quite a few challenges, so here are some worth mentioning and considering. Indeed, we need to invest in order to meet the huge potential and to make it open up the doors for the growth. And also, it was mentioned here before about the fleet expansion. Yes, we need to get more aircraft to serve the growth market, and not only to replace the present aircraft with the new ones. And then, of course, the infrastructure is and will become a bottleneck unless we do something about it. So we need to keep working towards realizing the seamless open sky, the seamless Asian skies that will harmonize the Asia Pacific. Yeah, okay, so I stepped a little ahead of my speech here. So safety is always our number one priority. Without a total commitment to the highest possible level of safety, nothing else matters. We need to get all countries to implement best practice processes and optimize the state-of-the-art technology that modern aircraft and ground-based equipment represent. The continuous enhancement of the competence among all aviation professionals in every country is a key to safe operations. We need to keep working towards realizing the seamless Asian skies that will harmonize the Asia-Pacific airspace and create optimal route structures and an effective unified air traffic management system. ICAO and IATA are working hard on this project, and a roadmap for implementation will be presented by the end of next year at the ICAO Assembly. On the political side, the progressive liberalization of the aviation markets will be necessary to prepare for the growth potential taking place and to satisfy customer expectations regarding a safe, smooth, and affordable air travel experience. When we talk about liberalization, this slide shows quite clearly the impacts of liberalization. The liberalization in Asia Pacific has already started. By 2015, the ASEAN Open Skies should be well on its way to cover all member countries, although not all of them at the same level in the beginning. This development will then hopefully expand and finally include a wider range of Asia Pacific region in one liberalized aviation market. With the growing passenger volumes, the infrastructure will not be sufficient. Present security screening and passenger handling processes will not do the job. So there's a lot to be done, but fortunately there are already many solutions on the drawing board. As you can see from this slide, many improvements are already work in progress or planned, and the investments are quite substantial. But this is not enough, and more needs to be done. So, a little bit about a hot topic, the environment. So when it comes to the environment, our industry is actually the only global industry to have set clear environmental goals. We have jointly agreed to improve fuel efficiency by 1.5% every year until 2020, after which we will have a carbon neutral growth. But in order to reach these goals, we have to get many things right. One huge opportunity and prerequisite for reaching our goals are biofuels. Asia Pacific has a great opportunity to take leadership in this area and bring biojet production and distribution to a scale that will make it commercially viable. You can see from this slide again what a big portion the biofuels could play in reducing the emissions of the airline industry. And actually, without the biofuels, it won't happen. But it's not the only part. I mean, there are so many other components in the environmental challenges that we have, but biofuels definitely play a very important role. So, in conclusion, I have now covered many areas, but by just scratching the surface. Let me conclude by saying that the aviation industry is like the blood supply to the body. The world cannot function without a healthy aviation industry. So we deserve to be recognized as a major contributor for good in our world. The IATA vision says it quite well: to be the force for value creation and innovation, driving safe, secure and sustainable air transport industry that connects and enriches the world. Although this is IATA's vision, it fits very well to our whole industry, which is not surprising considering that IATA represents, leads and serves 84% of the global airline industry. It is in our DNA to continuously do our best to support the entire aviation community and to do it with a great deal of passion. You have a couple of interesting days here ahead in this conference, so I wish you all a very enjoyable and successful Aviation Outlook conference. And I would like to thank you very much for your attention.